This lesson is called What is Author's Purpose? The standards that this lesson will help you apply to central idea, using text evidence in informational text, applying strategies to analyze how author unfold events in informational text, and we're also going to explore point of view, meaning and tone, and rhetorical devices. The objective of this lesson is to understand what author's purpose is and to explore and know the three main purposes for writing. I'm asking you to use this knowledge to read and discuss essays throughout the upcoming weeks. This is serving as a baseline on which you'll build some more information. So what is author's purpose? An author's approach to a topic depends on his or her purpose or reason for writing. An author's purpose is related to the effect he or she wishes to have on readers. Think about this. When you go home and you want to ask your parents something, you have a purpose in mind, and the way that you communicate with your parents relates to that purpose. If you were asking them to maybe have some extra time with your friends that night before you did your homework, you would need to go in with a certain tone, with a certain style, and with certain words to communicate them what you'd like to get out of that conversation. So purpose of an author usually happens three ways, and you can apply this to yourselves as well. Use the acronym PI to think about an author's purpose. An author can write to persuade, to inform, or entertain. And I want you to think about this in your conversations with others. Are you trying to persuade them, inform them, or entertain them? What's your piece of the pie? When you're persuading someone, you're trying to influence an audience's attitudes or actions. When you're informing someone, you're providing facts and explaining how they relate to one another. And when you're entertaining people, you engage and move the emotions of your audience. So think of your piece of the pie in your daily conversations with others. Writers do the same exact thing. Well, how does a writer do this? How do you do this in conversations? Well, you organize your information. The way you share your information with your audience is called the organization. You can make it very clear and straightforward, or you could make it very dramatic. That's called organization of information. You also choose language very particularly. You want to make your ideas clear, or do you want to create tone to convey your attitude? Think about your delivery and your language that you choose. Your language might be different for the purpose of your communication. If you're persuading someone, you might use different words than if you're informing them or entertaining them. Take a break here if you need to pause and take some notes, or just review the last few slides. Okay. There are some key elements of nonfiction, and now we've moved our course to exploring some elements of nonfiction and nonfiction writing. It's important that you understand the elements that are included. Nonfiction has a thesis or central idea. That is the main idea the author wants the audience to understand. Nonfiction also has a purpose. Again, this is your piece of pie. Persuade, inform, or entertain. Why is the author writing this piece? Nonfiction also has an organizational structure, the way and order in which information is presented. Nonfiction also has tone, which is the author's attitude and his or her word choices. And then diction is also word choice, including the level of formality and difficulty. You can also use figurative language or rhetoric. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. Again, apply this to a conversation you're having with an adult. Make that adult your teacher. You're trying to persuade your teacher that you don't want to do this week's homework. You start your statement with a thesis. I don't want to do this week's homework. The purpose of your conversation is to persuade your teacher. The organizational structure might include you making arguments in a logical manner as to why you shouldn't do your work. Your tone Your tone might be persuasive or trying to convince your teacher. And your diction, you might use words that are eloquent or advanced so that you can probably come off as saying, I don't need to do this work because I already know the answers. Okay, the same applies to elements of nonfiction. Let's talk a little bit about purpose. We talked about diction, we talked about tone, and we've talked about figurative language on the previous slide, but what do those things mean? Well, diction is an author's choice of words. An author can choose familiar words or technical language. Now, if you're reading a book and the diction is playful, it might be a story about someone. And if you're using technical words, say you're reading an article about science or space, you might have some more domain-specific or discipline-specific words such as space, gravity, light years, terms that specifically have to do with that topic. An author can also use words with strong connotations or meanings that appeal to a reader's senses or emotions. An example of diction is the situation was disastrous versus the situation was challenging. The choice in words in these two sentences makes the sentence vary quite a bit. Disastrous has a whole different meaning than the word challenging. Authors choose words carefully. Second is your tone. You may have been asked to watch your tone by your mom or dad or teachers before. Word choice creates tone. That's like when the teacher says to you, do you need help? And you say, yeah, or do you need help? Yes, please. That is a varying tone in your responses. Tone is an author's attitude towards a topic and audience. A tone can be informal or formal, playful or serious, joyous or annoyed. Those are just a few examples. Here's an example. This scoundrel will disgrace our city. This sentence has a tone of outrage. And finally, there's figurative language. Figurative language includes similes, metaphors, and personification, and all of these are used at times to further help the purpose of an author's piece. Finally, we have what are called rhetorical devices. Rhetorical devices are types of diction. They are word choice. What are rhetorical devices? Rhetorical devices are patterns of words and ideas that writers use to emphasize points and make them more clear or memorable. For example, if a writer's purpose is to inform you, they could use certain rhetorical devices to help you remember key points. If an author's purpose is to persuade you, he or she may use rhetorical devices to appeal to your emotions. Again, go back to the point where you don't want to do your homework. You might give a laundry list of things that you have to do this week so that you don't have to do your homework. You might appeal to whomever you're talking to's emotions. So some rhetorical devices that you're going to be asked to explore and identify and maybe analyze the use of throughout the upcoming weeks are repetition, parallel structure, restatement, and rhetorical questions. And I'm going to review them briefly. Repetition is the reuse of a keyword, phrase, or idea. Example, he plays well, he plays with passion, he plays in a unique style. We repeated the word plays to get through the idea that this person plays. He does it well, with passion, and with a unique style. Parallel structure may be new to a lot of you. Parallel structure is the use of similar grammatical structures to express related ideas. What does that mean? Well, when you form your sentences in the same manner, over and over to make your point. An example of that is the eagle soared above the treetops, into the heavens, and beyond reach. Those are three prepositional phrases that are used one after the other as a structure. You might start all of your sentences with the word I. That would be a parallel structure. You might use verbs in the same tense, which would be a parallel structure. Those are some examples. There's also restatement. Restatement is when you express the same idea in different words to strengthen your point. An example would be aspire to greatness, aim high, dream big. These are all pretty much the same idea. It's just stated 3 different ways. And finally, there are rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are questions with obvious answers that are just used merely for effect. An example of a rhetorical question might be, is it really too hard for you to attend class? Isn't it worth it? We all know that it's not too hard for students to attend class. That's their job. And we all know it's worth it. So those questions really don't stand to be answered. I know this lesson was lengthy. If you need some support, go back and take notes. We're going to be using this as a baseline to build from for the rest of the quarter so that you can analyze informational text and apply some of this information to understanding and analyzing the informational text.